How's everybody doing today? Good. I'm Joe Duffin. I'm Creative Director at Spry Digital here in town. And Spry puts on the Drupal meetups and stuff here, and I hope to join you guys with one of those at once or twice, because I'm excited about being involved with the Drupal organization here, and I'm excited to be here talking to you guys. So hopefully we'll go through some things, talk to each other a bit, and learn a thing or two. So I don't know how many of you guys are at agencies, but I'm a creative director. Creative directors do lots of stuff. I head up design at Spry, branding, strategy, all kinds of good stuff. But the best part of my job, the most enjoyable part, is I get to solve problems. And that can be challenging, because sometimes it's tough to even know, what problem you're facing. Just identifying the problems that you're having to begin with. So that's what I want to share with you today, is how we try to come together to solve lots of problems in typical web team applications. And a big part of that, as you find out, for us, is using wireframes to help communication. So, what I want, for me to consider this a success, you guys are all walking away from this saying, hey, I learned how to increase efficiency, reduce some headaches, and get our clients and our team on board a little faster. So that's how I'm going to measure my success, is if you've got something, just a little bit of something to take back to your team. But the first step in all this is to eliminate assumptions. Now, we all know the story of the plan. The plan was formed, and then came the assumptions, and it's the whole story of the crock of crap. But assumptions do lead to mistakes. In a development environment, we need lots of things to spec what we're going to work on. We need to know exactly what it is we're going to be building. You can assume, though, there is lots of room for assumptions. If you get a comp that has a hero image on it, do you assume that the designer wanted that hero image exactly the size that it is in the comp? Or is it meant to go full width? What do you do? How can we document these things? But if we don't get these things straight from the beginning, you end up doing it over. It's meant to be, full browser width. Well, I guess I get to do that whole thing over. Do-overs cost money. They cause bad feelings. Why didn't that jerk just tell me he wanted it full width? Why didn't he write it down, make a note, something? Or maybe he did somewhere and it got missed. That's what happens in my experience, that's one of the most common places for assumptions to happen. We assume that we communicated this in a way that you guys heard it, but it was just in the wrong spot. It got missed. So how can we eliminate these assumptions? Communicate. The most common problem agencies have is communication. More often than not, we just don't speak the same language. Can your designer speak in divs? Or if they try, does it just not make any sense? Because they don't know what they're talking about. Does the developer know how to speak in user experience? And the client, well, who's the client? How are they speaking? I don't know how many times I've had to sit with a client while they're explaining to me what they want. They're describing, if we had these tabs across the top. Oh, wait, you mean navigation. You mean a menu. Okay, got it. Well, they're calling them tabs. We don't have to correct them. We just have to understand that when the client says tabs, they're talking about the navigation. But at the same time, does everyone in your entire agency need to understand that? How does the person talking to the client, whether it's a designer, a creative director, or a PM, how does that person communicate it to other people on the team who need it? content writers, the strategists, the developers. We don't want to say tabs just because the client uses it. So getting everyone on the same page can be very challenging, even for something minor like that. But communication troubles lead to assumptions. Because without that context, if I said tabs to you guys, you'd be thinking of something completely different. All right. This is what I was talking about earlier. All these vehicles of agency communication. Hopefully you guys use most of these. There's a project requirements document where someone took the time to sit down and list all the requirements to the minute detail. And it's probably like 60 pages long. Weighs a couple pounds. And it's impossible to actually sit down and absorb, because everything's in there. Even if you've got a very detail-oriented person going through and cataloging everything and making you a table of contents and everything like that, I just want to know, what the behavior of this element is supposed to be. I want to know what happens on rollover. Where do I find that in the requirements document? But the requirements document is very necessary. Creative brief. Creative briefs are great. You get to know about the company, you get to understand the brand, what they stand for, what they can hang their hat on and everything, but it still doesn't tell you what the rollover state's supposed to be for that element. User stories. User stories are awesome too, and those can get enormous. But at the same time, gosh, how many of them do we already know? As a user, I want to log into my account. Well, yeah, okay. We know that. We know this is going to have a login. Let's get on, Does it still inform us of the rollover? No. Job starts, meeting notes. However your group divvies things up. Time tracking software, specific tasks. That's great. Slack, HipChat, Skype. Oh, yeah, we had a call with the client. They said that they wanted the rollover for that element you're talking about to do XYZ. Where's that documented? You got to go through the meeting notes and find that? What's going to be your Bible? I mean, you could add it to the project requirements, but is it really efficient to look through a big book to try to find that? Everyone needs to be accountable. We want everyone to be accountable. We want everyone to take this personally and really own their piece of the project. But who wants to spend 75, 80% of their time just tracking stuff down? When it comes to web projects, all the different aspects of putting it together, there is a constant from the beginning to end. It defines and dictates everything that we're doing. When it comes down to it, if we step back from our project and say, okay, why are we doing this? It's content. Content defines everything that we're going to do. From the layout to how we shape the user experience, what's required for development, content is shaping all of that. What's the most important message on the homepage? Is it succinct? What's the meaning for the message? What business problem are we solving? How are we making the client's job easier? What's the user looking for? What do we want the user to do? What's the content look like? Do they have great photography or long, informative pages of copy? It could be all those things. And if you look back at that last slide and all the different vehicles of communication that agencies use, all those things are just rattled off. You'll find them in different places. You'll find all those things in different places. But yet, a content-first approach is what we all want, but no one seems to work that way. Truly work that way. So, let's go over how a lot of agencies usually work. Almost all of them fall into three categories: Waterfall, Agile, or the raging cluster. Some people are familiar with the raging cluster. Great. All right, the waterfall method's like, You do one thing, and when that's complete, you do the next, and when that's complete, you do the next. You do. So if we take a content-first approach in the waterfall method, that means, well, the content needs are defined, copies written, assets are identified and prepared. All this content's ready to go before anything else starts. And then there's concept, analysis, design, the layout, which, from my perspective sounds awesome because I know exactly what the content's going to be. I can design specifically for each piece of content on every single page of the site. And then development. Wow, design is complete with the real content, then, your account executive, your PM, the designer can easily guide development, testing, and deployment. Sounds great. But the problem with this method is that it's a dream. It's a fantasy. It does not work that way for lots of reasons. No client in their right mind is going to agree to getting all of their content set in stone and signed off on before anything else happens. And the entire process will take forever. Now, we have a current client. Their website was finished months and months and months ago. I mean, like 6 months ago. Hasn't launched yet because they haven't finished their content. That's just how it goes. However, we talked about that content. We understood what it was going to be. We gave them the vehicle for their content. But they just need that time to develop it. And that's okay. That's okay. But, again, if you do that waterfall method, and you get all that content set in stone from the get-go, what happens if the client decides to change something? Will they be able to? If I've designed something for a specific chunk of content, no matter what it is, copy, video, some special functionality, if the client says, you know what, we need to update that, we need to change it to something else, will they even be able to once it's built? So the fact of the matter is, you can't do a waterfall method with a content-first approach. Which brings us to the Agile method. Agile method is great too. And I'm not going to take a deep dive into methodology, but the basic idea is to define different systems in your project and work in sprints to fully develop and launch each system incrementally. Whether it's ASD, Lean, Crystal Scrum, they work fantastically for software development. Getting that piece defined, building it and testing it and launching it and getting it ready for and getting everything ready for the next piece, that's awesome. It is a wonderful part of the development phase. But how can you do that with content? How can you take a content-first approach with an Agile methodology? Look, if we're doing sprints, where does branding and marketing and content fit into the sprints? It doesn't. What you end up with is a submarine that everyone worked on one little piece of. And the submarine might work, it might float, it might go underwater, and it's kind of cute because everyone has their little touch on it, but gosh, you think the client will like it? So you really can't use that Agile process from start to finish on a web project. Again, it can be a boon for the development phase of a site. But when you try to apply those traditional Agile methods on a website from concept to completion with a content-first approach, you end up with teammates tripping over each other. It's tough to work on a system when you know you'll probably need to incorporate elements from another system that hasn't even been defined. And that brings us to the raging cluster. Now, this is what clients like to see. They want to see the pretty pictures. I've got a vision in my head. It's like, I want a website like Apple. I want my site to look like, you're a construction company. Oh, no, it doesn't matter. I want my website to look like Apple. Okay. Well, we could jump in and design Apple's site for them. Or we could stop and say, what is it you like about Apple's site? What is it about Apple's site that you think fits in with your brand? But That's what clients love to do, jump right into design because they want to see those pretty pictures. They want to know what their site's going to look like. But it's honestly the opposite of a content-first approach. But it's so common. Talk about design first, get all the whiz-bang features in, develop under all these assumptions that typically include only ideal content scenarios. I mean, you know, a good designer can take great copy and stock photos and make something beautiful. Is the client's content actually going to fit in there? You know, part of the stock photos we pick, you know, they have to have some rationale to go with it. Okay, we're using a stock photo for a pick and a comp, but we use it because we want to show an auditorium full of people. Well, when it comes time for content development, are big groups of people, are those shots that the client can actually get? Is that representative at all of what they're doing? What's going to happen to the look and feel of that site if I show an empty auditorium? Is the design going to fall flat on its face? The message? You know, so often we have this nice, big, beautiful hero image with this powerful brand message on top of it. that image better be perfect. But what happens is we'll design something for this ideal situation and then try to force the content into the design later. You know? Or have the content developers, you know, try to create something to fit into this design. Oh, yeah, well, you know, this looks awesome, so go hire a photographer and, you know, have a photo shoot and an auditorium and fill it full of people too. A little tough to do after the fact. But with that design-first approach, the imminent raging cluster is palpable from the very beginning of the project. So all these things have to be controlled. So taking all those things in mind, what the client needs, what the developer needs, what design needs, everything, the problems that we're trying to solve, the things that we want to accomplish with our project, how can we be more efficient? We have these different processes that work pretty well for, you know, different pieces of the puzzle. If we use a content-first approach, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking. More than a do this before anything else. You know, it doesn't mean, oh, content actually literally first, just content top of mind. Everything that we do, we need to have, what's the content going to look like? What are we trying to accomplish? And if you break that down, you end up with pretty much these 6 primary phases, all starting with discovery. And they'll overlap. That's the nice part. That's how you can bring a little bit of Agile into this. You can take these things, discovery, information architecture, content strategy, design, development, testing and deployment, and you can actually bring in a little bit of Agile methodology if you do things right from the start. That's what the overlap starts looking like. You begin discovery. You have those client meetings, questionnaires, surveys, branding, research. Do some competitive analysis, business analysis. Sit down with the client and say, what are we trying to accomplish? Let's set some goals for this. That's all part of discovery. And that just has to get off the ground for IAs to start taking shape. Because if you're having these good meetings with the client and really listening to them and really making an effort to understand their business, it'll just start forming in your head. Yes, so this piece is very important to, or maybe it's very important to this segment of people that are going to be users on the website that we've interviewed. And you'll start that IA almost immediately after the first hour of the project. You know, the design phase can kick off early too. If you design with style tiles, you guys familiar with style tiles? Yeah, awesome. Okay, starting off with style tiles, getting that look, just that look and feel established. We're not doing any layout yet. We're just reviewing the brand. We're making sure that we get just these high-level concepts that are in line with the brand. If you can get style tiles approved quickly, That's enough to move into some development. So is a basic IA. You know, we can, with basic information architecture, we can get into some back-end development. And in that information architecture, you're starting to define those content types. With style tiles, you're starting to define some of the CSS. You know, we've got a font stack selected. But let's take a look at this piece in the middle. Content is the longest bar because we're working on it constantly. It's ever present. It impacts the entire model. So if we take that and break that down, we've got some very basic structure behind the content and a content strategy. Inventory. What do we have to work with? You know, does the client have a current site? Or it's 2017, I hope so. So let's take a good inventory of all their content. Audit. Let's see if it sucks. It probably does. You know, what can we do better? How's the SEO? You know, wow, look at all that flash. Yeah, we don't need an action script on your new site. Okay. Then we can move into wireframes. Wireframes, in this method, you have the opportunity to actually have a Bible that everybody can understand. You know, the project requirements document that's 60 pages long, that is kind of a Bible, and you do kind of update it and everything. But it's not a deliverable that you get sign off on from your client, because they're not going to read all that. So let's get something that they can. Now, what we've implemented at Spry are a form of wireframing that's very low fidelity. It's going to start defining content types, the components that make up those content types, and the hierarchy. That's it. No layout, no design, no other treatments. But we don't tell the client this, but it's really for development. You know, the added bonus is it's something that the client can see, they can understand, and they can sign off on. We can put it in front of them and say, hey, here's a page. Does this represent everything that you think will be on this page? And it's good for that. So I'm going to switch out here, and I'll show you this too. A few tools of the trade. I'm going to pull up some of these and show you some of our wireframes and how we go through our process. But Sketch, Envision, Flowchart, and the big thing in the back, Whiteboard. Extremely important. When you can sit down with a client and talk through their business problems, just start drawing, start writing stuff down, clients are visual. They love seeing things. They love seeing pictures, even if your picture is a word with a box around it and a line going to two other boxes. That's something that they can get on board with. Use that whiteboard. But Sketch, Envision, Flowchart, these three things work together. Not a plug for these specific things. You could throw them all in the trash and just use Whiteboard, and it'll work. But, we talked about, let me see if I can get this over there. Yeah. So we talked about an information architecture. Ooh, just got that. Is that blurry as all get out, or can you guys read that?
They're color coded.
Okay. All right. And now there we go. All right. So this is a pretty basic, kind of basic, IA for a Drupal site with a catalog or some e-commerce in it. Up in the key, green, Drupal content type. We've got Drupal parent pages, content type parent pages, interior pages, some stuff that might be behind the login, and some arrows describing relationships. So here's our basic structure. Now clients like this because you can say, okay, you see everything across the top line there? Equipment, projects, about us, etc. It's your navigation. That's going to be your main menu. Now, we can have lots and lots of other stuff. We can have multiple menus, not a problem. But after we talked to the client and went through this discovery, we processed everything, we analyzed everything, and we realized that these are going to be our primary groups. Guess what? They also cascade into our Drupal content types. So let's get back to products, but take the easy one, About Us. About Us is a parent page. It has some child pages there in gray, but it's going to have a blog in there too. So we click on news, we're going to have a blog row, and we're going to have a content type that's an article, a blog article. We're going to have a content type that's a dealer over on the right side. We're going to have a content type that's a download, one that's a gallery, a market landing page, an installation, and a product. So we know we're going to have those things. We can actually start setting those things up in Drupal already. Some of the relationships there, a product might pull a download, a PDF catalog is just going to be a link to a download. An installation might pull some testimonials. But you can see like in projects will have child pages that are installations and photo galleries, but those are actually parent pages of the content types beneath them. So something like this is really nice for a couple reasons. One, internally you can start having that discussion of, like I just went through that in 30 seconds. You guys probably have all kinds of questions. But you can go through that internally and talk about it. Answer those questions. Well, what do you mean by just pull from a download section? Well, yeah, we talked through all that. On the client side, they can start to visualize. They can see, and they'll start, doing a little designing themselves. So when I hover on projects and I click on photo galleries, I'll see like a bunch of photo galleries, right? And you can say, maybe. We haven't gotten there yet, but that's where they'll live. We are going to have a thing called a photo gallery, and that's where it's going to live. So that's something really nice you can communicate to the client. What's even better is you can take this and start doing those lo-fi wireframes I was talking about. Let's look at some of those. Okay, so we're looking at this in Envision. The wireframes are built in Sketch, but you can build them in anything you want. Illustrator, doesn't matter. Pulling them into Envision is just a nice way to present these to a client, because the client can drop, your team can too, and probably will, drop pins with questions or suggestions on them. And you'll see you can make some neat little interactions that kind of have a half-assed kind of prototype here. So, what we've done here is just laying out a basic homepage, except it's not layout. I just use the word layout. All we're showing here, and this is something very important to stress to the client, all we're showing is what kind of content's going to go on the page and the hierarchy there behind it. So on a homepage, we're going to have a slider. It's going to be the first thing you see. Yeah, we're going to have a header, we're going to have a footer, you're going to have a main menu, but right now we're looking at your homepage content. Not the structure around it, not the structure that defines it, just the content. The first thing is going to be a slider. And if I dive into that slider, you'll be able to see, each slide will have a title, a description, a link, and an image. And we can start defining all these things. And we don't have to do it immediately. We can add to this. As design starts getting in progress, we can put parameters around things. Like, okay, the image is going to have a minimum dimensions of 980 by 450, right? And a max upload size of 2 megabytes. It doesn't matter at this stage. When we're first showing these to the client, you probably won't have that information. But it's something you can update for your own team as you move down the line. You can start building around that, just knowing that a slide is going to have 4 things. That means we need to, oh shoot, we gotta, give them the ability to upload an image, et cetera, or better yet, what kind of modules exist for Drupal that we can just drop in there, And you know what? I'll tell you a secret. Designers love that because we don't know what it's going to look like yet. If you give us a little bit of parameter and say, hey Joe, I've been looking at the kind of stuff that the client's talking about maybe putting up there, and I think that this Drupal module would work really well. Awesome. That's awesome. You know why? Because I can look at the demos of that module, and that can help inform my design. You just made my life easier. I don't have to design something from scratch. And made your life easier too. You don't have to you don't have to build it from scratch. We're working together and being more efficient. Awesome. Love that. All right, just moving down the page. Well, we gotta have a page title. We know that wants to be we know we want that we know we want that to be our H1. Put a character limit on it in the back end? Sure. And again, you can get as detailed or as minimal as you want on these descriptions here. We can go ahead and inform metadata there if you want to. But, the big thing is, if you can keep these wireframes updated, whenever you learn something new about one of these little pieces, just go in and add the text. Callouts. We want 3 primary callouts on the page. And guess what? Callout's going to be made up of these things. Again, image, title, description, link. They're also going to be manual input. Well, I didn't really say that, but the one below it does say dynamic. But that, for a new team, that'd be great to put on there. This is going to be a manual input. So on the homepage template, we need to give the client the ability to put in content for 3 primary callouts. And they're required. They have to do that. Otherwise, it's going to break everything. And below that, we're going to have something dynamic. We're going to list all the client services right here. Services are the child pages of the services page, and we're just going to pull them in dynamically. We'll define all of these things on the service page, but from that service page that might have many, many elements, we'll pull these elements. Featured thumbnail, or a thumbnail generated from the featured image. Service title, excerpt, link. Just start defining different content. Client needs a WYSIWYG down there, we have a spot for a WYSIWYG. We need a call to action, put a spot for a call to action. Whatever you need on that homepage, just start defining it. The other thing that's nice about Envision here is you can create these hotspots. Right? So this is showing a rollover. And up here, this is not part of the design or anything. This is just a way to navigate your prototype. You can click to go to different pages. So this is showing what a people page might look like. So the client said, you know what, we need to show off our people. We need to make sure that you can see information about each individual that works here, or each member of the leadership team. Whatever they need. Where does that belong? Well, the About Us section, right? Okay, so we need a people page. The people that work at Corporation XYZ. What do we need on that page? Well, are we having header images everywhere? Is that what the client liked? We define that some point in time. We're going to have a header image. Breadcrumb's going to show up there. Page titles, WYSIWYG. Lo and behold, our person previews. If we go back to our IA, we'll see that we have a content type called a person. He's going to pull previews of all those people. Okay, I'm not going to dwell on this too much longer, but you get the idea. Dynamically pulling in the child pages. The whole point of all this is, again, one, this is information that development can really use to get building almost immediately. And two, it's something the client can see. It's something that they can feel and really get on board with. And they can play with it too. So this is what we like to do to really push things forward, and it really gets into that process of layering all these different parts of the project. I'm going to switch back to this now because we have about 10 minutes left if anybody has questions. Anyone? No?
You have a slice available somewhere?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be getting the slides to the people who run this show, and I guess they're going to have this audio to go with it. Yes, sir.
How does the handoff between design and development look like?
Oh, it's not necessarily handoff. It's constant communication. So we like to have representatives of development, design, account, copy. We like to have all those representatives in, primary like milestone meetings, and also in like a weekly status meeting, if we can, whenever it's practical. So development kind of knows what's coming. When design has something, whatever, every week, if, what's going on with design? We did this and this and this. Oh, you did, huh? Can I see it? Can I see it? Because, you just said something that makes me think, I don't want to build that, so let's take a look. Yeah. And then, once we have those deliverables signed off on by the client, I go straight to development. It's ready to go. It's like the style tiles, that's a big handoff right there. The IA, that's a big handoff right there. As soon as the IA is signed off on, that goes to back end and they start setting up Drupal. Bless you. Anyone else? Yes?
Do you have a specific approach that you take when you're designing to mapping the front end content to how it's updated in the back end?
Yes. As a matter of fact, so, stuff like this, flowcharts, user flows. So this is one of those things it's rough the first time you do it, but then after that you just reuse most of it because it's an account login. What happens if I click on login account? Well, I can log in, I can create a new account. There's a link for forgot the password. So all of these things, this maps all of those actions out, all those user actions out. And we'll have wireframes for everything that's an actual page in there. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
What kind of approach do you take when you have a customer that doesn't want to provide the content and just say, hey, just give me something?
That never happens. Yeah. I just want to see something, right? It goes back to that client that just has to see something. I don't know what it's going to look like. Well, you take that approach of, okay, that means I'm dictating to you. That means, I might create something up, when it comes to design. As long as we've talked about the kind of things that are going on the page, you just won't have all those details in the wireframes. But there's going to be an image, there's going to be a title, there's going to be an H1, there's going to be a WYSIWYG here. Resist the temptation to just put WYSIWYGs everywhere, because the client would love that, the site will be horrible. But you just keep those at an even higher level, and then just say, push it off to the designers. It's their problem now, right? Yeah. No, really. I mean, they can design within those parameters. We know we have a thing here. Well, it would be awesome if the thing looks like this. It would be awesome if that copy was exactly this long. And then that at least provides a starting point and a discussion for the client. But the important thing is, you got to bring that up. You got to say, okay, dude, you didn't give me anything to go on here. So we did something that we think looks really nice, but if you like this, this is what you're going to have to do. Yes, ma'am.
So after you go through this rough wireframe process, do you convert them into like PDFs, like with actual images and content and
No.
everything before the development begins?
No.
No, so you have no visual concept of what the finished product's going to look like?
Comps, we do a visual comp after this, essentially.
And
So,
in what type of format?
or whatever the designer likes, you know, whether it's Illustrator, Photoshop, Sketch.
yeah.
Yeah, Photoshop,
So
Sketch,
it's
and Photoshop.
actual, so then when the developers are building the site, they're going to do one for one to make it look exactly like the finished product?
Not necessarily. The thing is, it's if you look at it from a holistic standpoint, that's been growing from the very beginning. So we have style tiles from the very beginning. That's getting across that look and feel. That's getting across some of that design, that personality of the company, and what the site's going to look like, right? We have the IA, we have the wireframes that say, well, these are the types of content that are going to be on a page. This is what the client needs. This is what development needs. Now, that's why I stress to a client in the beginning when we show them wireframes, this is not layout. You know, final site might have a sidebar. I wouldn't show that in a wireframe necessarily, not in one of these. Not necessarily, it depends. But, you know, that could be decided during design. Or we might be thinking it the whole time. But if we think it, we've expressed it to the team and they know it's coming. You know what I mean? So these things are kind of happening and growing organically behind the scenes. So the wireframes are never just taken and saying, and like, you know, skinned, right? Because it's not layout. So the design might come later. You know what? I can show you. I think I can. Let me see if I can find it. This wireframe that we're looking at now was the basis for here we go. Was the basis for a construction company's website. Oops. So much of this turned in to this. There's our slider. There's our nav. There's our H1, our message. There's the call-out section. There's the services. Everything that's in the wireframes is represented here. If I showed you these separately with no context, they don't necessarily look like they go together. But if we've been working together all along, oh yeah, you'll see it right away.
So your graphic designers are building this?
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. Anyone else? I have 2 minutes.
What was your recommended software for the wireframes?
Yeah, we use that. We use Sketch for that. But
Lucid Chart, was it Envision?
yes, yeah, Lucid Chart's great for mapping. You know, it's wonderful for flowcharts. Envision's really good for presentations, and Sketch is fine. You know, not my favorite, but it's an easy integration. You know, you could use Adobe XD, you could use Illustrator, you could use Paint if you wanted to. Yeah. Anyone else? All right, thanks guys.